discredit somehow a particular pathway to voting is absolutely ridiculous. It's almost as if they're trying to racialize somehow mail-in voting, as if it's
Damon
something.
Hewitt, we're going to have to leave it there. I thank you so much for being with us. President and Executive Director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. Election Protection Hotline is 866-OUR-VOTE if anyone has any trouble. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them, and not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
Good afternoon. I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here. Glad to have you along. Today is Tuesday, Election Day, November 8th, 2022. And I think, the world is focused on choices, challenges that lie ahead for each of us in our communities, particularly around this country. Minnesota, no exception, a nail biter here, particularly around the race involving Minnesota's Attorney General. We call him the celebrated Keith Ellison, the people's lawyer, but he's being challenged in a very aggressive way by the Republican Party, launching a candidate, from our point of view, who's never seen a courtroom trial setting, who's not done much of the work that Attorney General Ellison has done, but who is, as an unknown, an easier candidate to run against the incumbent that the Republicans don't like. So it makes it interesting. I'm going to spend today talking to a variety of colleagues of mine around the country and locally who are in the publishing arena, asking their comment on races that are important to them. I want to begin by bringing in my friend and one of my elders and leaders, Robert W. Bogle. Robert Bogle is the publisher of the great Philadelphia Tribune newspaper. I believe it's the oldest Black paper in America. Correct me if I'm wrong. Brother Bob Bogle, good afternoon. Welcome to the conversation. How are you?
Fine, good afternoon. Yes, 1884. We're 138 years old. We're the oldest continuously published newspaper serving the African American community. That would be accurate, yes.
Let me introduce,
obviously.
Let me introduce you to my colleague, a writing partner, Brenda Gray, is a person I went to kindergarten with in Kansas City. And now she works with me every day as a co-host of this program and writing the stories that come from these interviews. So Brenda, how are you?
I'm fine. A little bit in angst as to how everything's going to come out. I haven't watched any news, so I think I'm going to be surprised.
Bob, what's the political landscape right now? The hot topic in your state, obviously, a lot of attention from the president, from former President Barack Obama as well. How do things look in the Fetterman contest in particular, and in general for Black voters, Black community in the state of Pennsylvania?
Well, quite frankly, Oz, who is running against Fetterman, Dr. Oz, has given some mixed languages and messages, none of which would be the best thing for our community. Fetterman, as you know, suffered a stroke in the early part of this year, and Oz has tried to play or take advantage of that. And all of the medical people have made it clear that Oz is recuperating quite well and timely in relationship. Fetterman. I'm sorry, Fetterman, in relationship to what many stroke victims have been a part of. But it appears so far we have good weather, and we have so far all that I've heard is that voting is up over what they anticipated. When I went to our polling place early this morning, there was a line in front, and a line in back. So
Mhm.
that's encouraging, because hopefully the more people we can get out to vote, the better chance we have of coming away with candidates who are interested in who we are and our vote and have expressed so here in Pennsylvania. But we have two big ones. You have the governor's race and the Senate race.
And so let's say that we are successful, and to me, success means that we maintain or get wins with Democratic candidates. How does 2024 look to you? What's going to shape up for 2024? Let's presume that we escape the doomsday that's been predicted for today, and the reemergence of Republican control, potentially of the Senate and the House. Let's say we get past that unscathed. How does 2024 look to you?
I'll be able to answer that better after seeing what happens today. The Republican story isn't encouraging for African Americans in particular. And that's, I'm making that statement based on what I've read and heard throughout America, but also here in Pennsylvania. So the mega vote and Donald Trump certainly have not embraced issues that have been important to the African American community. And so I think a great deal of what we can look forward to and expect in 24 will be told today. Trump has already made it clear that he's going to make an announcement, I believe on the 15th of this month from Mar-a-Lago.
Uh-huh. That's what he said, right? Well, let me ask you this, Bob Bogle. Take a minute to reflect on your role as the leader of the oldest continuously published Black newspaper in the country, the Philadelphia Tribune, and talk about our mutual association, the Black Press of America, the National Newspaper Publishers Association. And I'm interested in just hearing you reflect on what having a healthy Black press has meant and continues to mean and will mean in the future. How critical is it that you and I, Bob Bogle, keep our hands on the wheel of meaning making, of creating scenarios, narratives out of which our people can draw victory and sustenance? And what are your thoughts?
We tell a story that no one else tells. Our newspaper here, the Inquirer, has already admitted that they had been discriminatory towards the African American community and experience, and they're spending more time in articulating an African American story. But as usual, they don't know who we are, and while they may have African Americans working for them, they're not telling the stories that we tell, which are critical to the communities that we serve. These are real life experiences that we project every single day that are overlooked or ignored by other media. And without us, a great deal of what the African American experience is will never be told.
Are there any examples that come to mind, Bob Bogle, about either historic battles that we've engaged in, that you've engaged in as a leader of both your newspaper, but also you've been a leader and are a leader of the Black Press of America. You've been the chair of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Any stories come to mind that are memorable?
You threw one on me, which I did not expect. I'm not surprised that you would do that. But just reflecting now, I mean, there have been different situations throughout my lifetime where the experience of African Americans certainly has been different than those from European descent. And every day, while America has made significant changes since 1619, there's still this division. There's still those who are privileged, and we're denied the same access and opportunity. So I could talk institutionally to you, Dr. McFarlane. But if you do talk institutionally, you can tell the story that I would tell because those stories are, quite frankly, not much different. The geography may be different. Institutionally, it will be the same. So for me to reflect on just one thing, whether it's voting, whether it's our rights, whether it's healthcare, whether it's employment, Dr. McFarlane, it is clear that America still suffers from slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Slavery still has its grip and has played its hand on those who would continue this practice differently, but philosophically not much different. They're those who won't give it up and share the experience of the greatness of this nation out of fear that they will be denied what we have been denied, which is equal access and opportunity. There's an enormous fear from those I hear, from those on the other side. This fear that they will be positioned as we have historically been, and they want to continue to be empowered, and at the same time can continue to deny us. I'm saying this word for one more time, to deny us equal access and opportunity. I don't mind some of the things I see, but I want the same opportunity. African Americans are just as capable in any field of endeavor. It doesn't matter if given the chance. The issue is they are prioritized as number one, and everybody else comes after them. And that gives them an unfair advantage where they are the beneficiaries of community participation that's denied fairly to all of us.
So let me stretch out on that, Bob Bogle. Thank you for the comment. And, my shows are always unscripted, unrehearsed. So thank you for being willing to accept a conversation direction in a way that we have been prepped for. But on the other hand, you and I are always prepared to have this conversation, I believe, about our people and our work, our mission and our vision as communicators, as publishers and owners of media. And so, I think you've properly described the impasse, the fear that prevents them from extending a sense, or from stopping their blockage, their resistance to our development and our access to the opportunity that we ought to not have to question that we have access to. Given that, how do we continue to do the workaround? I'm thinking about what's happening not only in this country, but what's happening in South America, in Africa. Are there strategies, are there relationships, are there possibilities of engagement that make this not a two-way struggle where it's just white people or just the former enslavers and the former enslaved, whites and blacks, but is there another way to engage a lot of more people in global and systemic change that will benefit us and everybody else at the same time? I'm rambling with the question, but Bob Bogle, what are your thoughts?
My first thought is I can expect anything from you. I should never be surprised. Let me not go and institutionalize the world. Let me deal first with where I live, where you live, and the co-host lives. Our greatest problem, our greatest shortcoming is we have failed to support each other. And the day that we change that commitment will be the day that we change being second-class citizens. That is the story I've told, and I will continue to tell. And I'm relentless. I'm determined that we have failed and will continue to fail until we institutionalize our relationships in our community.
Amazing. That's wonderful. Well, that's
Wow.
a mic drop right there.
I was getting ready to say that was one.
But I mean that seriously.
No,
I mean,
it's true.
Support institutionally, again, we don't support one another. I mean, who'll go around the store and buy a quart of milk, and we'll go to the beneficiaries, the same people who've been kicking me, the same people who've been denying me, and won't go around the other corner and support the African American in business. Whether it's a newspaper too, by the way, we have not been exempt from that, because we continue to tell stories that they will never be able to tell, because we're in these communities. These people are my next door neighbors. They're the lady or man up the street. It isn't a distant relationship. They're my neighbors, some of my associates. Since I don't use the word friend too freely, I will define that too. These are people that we know. But if I ever say anything to anybody here today, I say it here at the Tribune. We must learn to come together for each other. We must learn to support one another. Now remember, we were taught differently. We were trained not to do that. And that's why I said earlier, the institutionalization of slavery still continues in many ways, because they convinced us that whatever we do is not as good as theirs is. You know the story about their ice and their water and their ice cream. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about, McFarlane.
No, I got it. You know, I know the story.
But equal access and opportunity will never happen as long as we continue to fail to support one another. I mean, and we have the same advantages and disadvantages if you look at what opportunity will prevail. What we want is the opportunity. What we want is the relationship. But they will never feel it until they're denied as we have been. And we will always be second class until we understand we can be first class by just doing, the first thing is support one another. They do it every day, ethnically, geographically. They ain't going out of their way to support me. No. And don't you kid yourself, they're not going out of their way to support you either. They're supporting you because there's an advantage to that. They call themselves a beneficiary of that. They're getting something out of that. We must turn the table. We must change the tide.
My experience, Bob Bogle, is that why people don't do right because it's right. They do it because they have to, particularly when it comes to us. And whenever I've experienced a beneficial business relationship, it wasn't only on the value or the merits of the market viability of the people served by my newspaper, Inside News, but beyond that, there was pressure of some kind or another, from some place or another, that forged a decision that worked to my advantage, and it certainly worked to theirs as well, but an advantage they were willing to forego if they could maintain their position without enabling me to advantage at the same time. Listen, I'm joined by a colleague of yours and mine, Brother James Washington, who is joining us from Atlanta. Brother Washington, publisher of the Atlanta Voice, right, and the Dallas Weekly as well. James, come on in. How you doing, man?
Oh, no, let me just give a little clarification. I'm not the publisher of the Atlanta Voice, president and general manager.
Thank you, sir.
And co-publisher, used to be owner of the Dallas Weekly. Just so that gets straight, because you know you go out everywhere. Nobody, I don't know who hears this.
Let's make it right. And thank you so much, president and general manager of the Atlanta Voice.
That's it.
I've known you as the owner and publisher of the Dallas Weekly.
Correct.
Most of all, I know you as an outstanding human being. I call you and brother Bob Bogle, Mr. Bob Bogle, human beings par excellence.
All right, wait a minute. Cut from the same cloth, maybe not at the same time, but he was cut from one end and I was cut from the other. We'll just put that out there now.
Got it.
Well, good to see you, good brother. Glad to be here.
Talk about Atlanta. What's happening in Atlanta? Two hot races, you know, with the Senate race and the governor's race. Where do we stand right now in the middle of election day?
Well, in the middle of election day, you got to remember they broke records in terms of early voting, not registration. Early voting they broke records and 2.4 million people voted early, which is almost a third of the voting electorate here. They already have analyzed most folks who look like everybody on this call were more likely to go vote early. And those who have children and all that other kind of stuff, those are the ones who tend to come late, along with what I would call the Republican Party. So right now, with everything that has gone on, they want to create a narrative that shows to say that, you know, the early voter turnout makes it seem as though there were no problems with voter suppression and, you know, minimizing where you could go vote, when you could go vote, and that kind of stuff. So you have the state a little on edge, waiting for something to go wrong. It has not yet. Most people are reporting in, and we've got folks just about all over, at least Fulton County, where Atlanta is, basically saying that, you know, it's kind of going smoothly. There have not been any log jams, or I think one or two technical difficulties that they resolved quickly. So now it's just long lines. They still have those. But people are out and participating. Polls have, you know, different polls have different stories, Al, as you know.
Mm-hmm. But on the ground and from where you stand, where you sit in Atlanta, is it likely that both Warnock will succeed, that Stacey will succeed, those campaigns? How's it look from where you stand?
Now you got to remember, when you use the term on the ground,
yep.
All right, and on the ground I see and the ground we've seen are in neighborhoods and communities, if you will, that are, for the most part, as I could tell, more so in line with the Democratic Party, as well as results as differently from the Republican Party. But north of the middle of the state is basically red, south is basically blue, with a lot of rural areas south. It's understood that the rural part of the state is definitely Republican, and urban areas in Atlanta, in Georgia, are basically Democrat. The polls would say it's and like I said, you can't trust them, that Stacey Abrams is polling behind the current governor, and it's a toss-up between Herschel, if you can believe what I'm saying. It's a toss-up between Herschel Walker and Senator Warnock.
It's amazing, you know, and I'm just probably like everybody else around the country, feeling besieged almost, watching political ads on television in particular, all day, all night, and particularly around Herschel Walker and Raphael and the other candidates. So there's almost a burnout feeling here, and people are glad that it's almost over. It's what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling.
The effort here is nobody wants a runoff. They're looking to see whether or not Governor Kemp's coattails will bring Herschel Walker across the finish line, which is possible. That's all I can say. I mean, it's incredulous, but it's possible.
That's a great word for it.
Let me introduce you, Jim Washington. This is Brenda Lyle-Gray. Brenda Lyle and I were in kindergarten together in Kansas City.
All right.
Everyone has that same response.
Joins me every day for this program. She's in Arizona, or New Mexico.
New Mexico.
Okay, so that's how you got Atlanta, you got New Mexico, you got Philadelphia, and you're in Minnesota. Hey, I'm in good company.
Well, let me bring one more voice, another colleague and a friend. This is the first time we've done this together. Waming Mua is the publisher of Hmong Today here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. He's based in St. Paul. He and I are colleagues on a couple of levels. We both are principals in a group called the Minnesota Multicultural Media Consortium, an organization that's kind of like NNPA, but at a micro level. Where publishers, owners of Black, Asian, Latino, African media work together to try to get more money, more sales, and to support our businesses. And Waming, I asked him this morning to join this call for a second because there are a number of important elections in St. Paul, Minnesota that are going to be presenting and sending Hmong community leaders to the legislature and perhaps to the county board in Ramsey County. Waming, good afternoon, brother. How are you doing?
Thank you, Al, for having me on.
Take a minute and introduce Hmong colleagues and to our audiences here at KFAI, but give me your 3 to 5 minute assessment of what's happening for the Hmong community in St. Paul. And when I asked you to do this today, I asked you because I said, our communities are in the same geographic space in St. Paul and in North Minneapolis. And so it makes sense that as business people, as residents, as neighbors, as classmates in school, we figure out ways to model a way to protect our culture on the one hand, but also move our communities towards shared prosperity, opportunity, and fulfillment. So in that spirit, I've invited you to be and talk about what's happening in the Hmong community, which is in the Black community. I could say the other way around as well. Waming.
Well, first of all, just to briefly bring everybody up to date on what the Hmong have been able to do in Minnesota ever since 2003, when we first elected Senator Lee Moore into the state legislature. Most dozens of Hmong have run since then and have been very successful here in Minnesota and have actually been a model for other Asian communities throughout the country.
Is anybody having trouble hearing him? Your voice is wobbling a little bit. So I don't know if you can do something to get a clearer voice.
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead. Try it again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to bring everybody up to date, we have been fairly successful here in the state of Minnesota on getting elected officials. And that has actually been a model for other Asian communities throughout the country on how to mobilize voters.
I'm having some problems. Yes, I'm having some problems.
Is that better?
Yeah, better. It is.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, just to get back on the Hmong community here, we've been able to get a number of legislators, senators into the state government, and have been actually a model for other communities throughout the country on how to mobilize voters, on how to get elections out there, and how to run campaigns. And so this year is pretty important because we've had probably more people on the ballots than ever before, and
we don't lost the connection. He'll come back in. Oh, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay. Yep. And so, yeah. And so today it's a pretty historical day for us. We have about 7 or 8 folks on ballots throughout the Twin Cities, and it's looking pretty good, to tell you the truth.
How does it work that your community works in tandem with or in competition to the African American community? How does it look to you?
I think definitely in tandem. I mean, whenever there's an African American candidate, I see a lot of Hmong folks supporting that person as well, and likewise, conversely as well. Whenever a Hmong candidates out there, I see a lot of support from the African American community, and I think it's voted pretty well for both of our communities.
So let me ask Jim Washington and Robert Bogle to weigh in. All of this to me adds up to the whole notion of the browning of America. More people, Black, Asian, Latino, Native American, and all of that perceived as a threat to the notion of white supremacy or white control. The demographics of what they are changes afoot. How do we both continue to recognize it, to use the data to promote advantage, opportunity, and progress, but also to do it in a way that doesn't create this irrational fear among white people, because they're dangerous when they feel themselves being besieged by the change that is inevitable. That's what I say. Maybe I'm saying it the wrong way. Robert Bogle, what do you think? Your voice is muted. No, I'm not hearing you. No, we're not hearing you, Bob. Jim, can we hear you? Oh, here we go.
Well, I haven't changed anything. Let's see. Can you hear me now?
Go ahead. Yeah,
Can you
we
hear
do.
me now? Can you
Yes.
hear me? Well, I'm not muted here. I'm not muted here.
No, I hear you. Go ahead.
Reality is threatened by any group or all. White America is threatened by any group and all groups that don't embrace who they are. So whether you're black or brown, and I don't get hung up in either one, we are a threat. We continue to be a threat to their continued empowerment. And they're going to do whatever they can to maintain that. Stop and think that if you had been in charge of America since 1619, how would you feel in 2022 about giving it up? You're first in line for everything. Doesn't matter what it is. And so to have any group, brown, black, medium, it doesn't matter, that becomes a threat. And according to all the information available, by 2030, 35, white America is posed to be in a minority as it relates to race, color.
Mm-hmm.
Today is 22. That ain't very far away. Now, I want to characterize all white people as being racist. I don't think all white people are racist. But no one wants to give up the privilege. If you had it, I doubt if you would. And since I'm fighting to get it, I'm not. I want to keep what I got. But threatened. I mean, 325 million people in America. We represent 14% of that. 43 million, 44. And then, of course, you have a Latino or Latina community, which represents another probably 20%. So between those right now, you're talking about 35, 36% of the total population. And then you have to do some more demographics as it relates to age, education, other issues that come into consideration. But if we only talk about race, it will not be as long as it's been. And there is this continued fear that a day is coming.
Jim, what do you think? What's your sense of the direction?
I tend to be fairly simplistic in my view of things like this. And I mean, those in power want to keep it. Those who are not feel like they should do it. They should be striving for that same power, if you will. And when you look at it, the reality, the way I see it at least, is, America's still in an experiment. I mean, this is a global, universal experiment called America, and it is by no means been achieved in any way. And I think we keep moving through phases of it. This phase is one where at one point in time, the larger community that was in power is now realizing that the system, the rules, if you will, are in place so that there should be some participation, if not power sharing. And the reality of that is, as I'll use Bob's term, that's frightening to some people, even if they don't know it. So we are still in that experiment, and it keeps coming because our borders, our laws, if you will, should be written in such a way that we are accepting of this change that everybody is looking at. When I say the change I'm talking about is the browning of America, which has been talked about forever. One day this is going to happen. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that, those who are in line, it's kind of hard to describe to people who don't know they have privilege, that they have privilege. And that privilege is what they feel is under attack. By the same token, I'm one of those folks that likes to go back to the source. If I can figure out how I got into something, I can pretty much figure out how I got out of it, or how to get out of it. And in the scenario that we're talking about, this thing is so systemic that it goes down to redlining, it goes down to government loans on houses, it goes down to banking restrictions, it goes to education opportunities, etc. And nobody in the larger community ever wants to take responsibility for the situation that exists today. And that situation that exists is fully lined with inequities. Some you can deliberately attribute it as intentional to the larger community. Well, and I hope I don't take up too much time on this, but I remember distinctly going to elementary school. I'm not a young pup over here. And in elementary school, you had a class called civics. And civics class was taught as a regular part of understanding what it meant to be a citizen in the United States of America. The branches of government, all of those things were part of being aware of what it meant. Now, let me throw a little race in this. Once you add race and you say woke, I mean, we look at woke as being aware of the conditions, aware of what's going on, aware of our roles and responsibilities and that kind of stuff. But as soon as you throw race into it, that is used against you. All right? Which if you said, we just want to be aware of what's going on and some of the things that I just delineated, that is not just scary. It is frightening. And you got to know, I blame Obama for everything. I probably shouldn't say this on this show, but Obama forced America to turn over the rock and look at the worms. I mean, he just forced that because he was an elected official. I used to think that it was going to be a financial revolution. That was the last bastion, if you will, of what I would call power and access to power was going to be in the financial institutions. And what I discovered once Obama got elected was no, it's policy. I mean, once you find somebody who can begin to get in a room and start debating policy, and what quote policy matters, because if I got to write policy so everybody on this call is advantaged, and where does that come from? That comes from the vote. That comes from a reality. All of y'all remember, and I'll shut up. I know I'm rambling now. I apologize. Y'all all remember when Obama won? There were tears in our living rooms and on streets and in cars that everybody know. What you think was happening in white folks' households? And that immediately, I don't care what he does, we must be against it. So therefore, that's when, it doesn't matter what the citizenry, what's best for the citizenry. Statesmanship went out the window. All we want to do is win. And we're getting a lot of that down here in Georgia. Is Herschel Walker the best candidate? Absolutely not. But I don't care because I want that seat. I got to have that governor's seat because we got to have that power. I mean, that's about as blatant as you can get. I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't get a lot of time to get on my soapbox.
Right on the point. Thank you so much. We had the Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison in the back room. Hopefully maybe he was in movement. Hopefully he'll join us again because I wanted him to talk about how his contest right now is going on. He's in the middle of a major contest. As I indicated, he's being challenged by a Republican who has no courtroom experience, who hasn't done any trial law, and who I believe is being put up, who we say is being put up because he has a record that you really can't look at. There is no record. And therefore, he's their kind of ghost. Keith is here, I think. Keith Ellison, good afternoon. Jump in the call here. Let me introduce you to my colleagues. You might know Waming Mua over in St. Paul at Monterey. But Jim Washington is with the Atlanta Voice in Atlanta, Georgia. And Robert Bogle is one of the deans, the dean of our profession, who's the president and CEO of the Philadelphia Tribune, oldest continuously published Black newspaper in America. Keith, where do we stand and what's on your mind as you're in the middle of your contest right now?
Well, it's about almost 2:00, and that means that the day is about halfway over. And we're out knocking doors. In Minnesota, our laws allow us to do knock and drag. You can have same-day voter registration in Minnesota. So in Minnesota, you can actually meet somebody who is never registered to vote. They can register at the polls and vote. So that's a tremendous advantage that we have. It helps explain why I have the top turnout in the country. But, my opponent really is, and I really are very different. I have a lifelong history of fighting for workers and farmers and consumers and ordinary people. This guy's a Wall Street hedge fund lawyer whose profit, he got His hedge fund got $2.6 billion during the pandemic. So he's a price gouging pandemic profiteer. And I'm a people's lawyer. So that's the difference between me and him. You know, he is talking about crime, but he's never prosecuted anyone. He's never even argued a motion in court. And I've been a criminal. I've been doing trial law ever since I got out of law school. But you know, when you met me as a law student, Al, I was a trial lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And that was about 32 years ago, brother. and so, you know, we've been at this. And so, you know, Mike, you know, we successfully led the prosecution of George Floyd when the eyes of the world were on Minnesota. We didn't blink, we didn't break, we didn't fold. We stood up, we did what was right, we delivered equal justice. And so that's really what's going on. They're putting him up because, I mean, quite honestly, you know, the police federation is mad at me for prosecuting Derek Chauvin. Mm-hmm. So they put him up, you know, and that's what they did. And we're just trying to get people out. And, you know, here's the good news. All over Minnesota, voting is up. Mm-hmm. Voting is up above 2018 levels. We know that when we turn out the vote, that means good things for regular people. When the voter base is small, that's not good. Mm-hmm. Now, I will admit that the rain that I'm seeing out here is a little worrisome, but it's not too heavy. So I'm pretty sure people are going to get out there and vote. And I just want to tell everybody listening to your show, do not let a little moisture don't stop you from getting to the polls. The polls are open until 8 p.m. tonight. If you're in line, when the polls close, you have the right to vote. And you don't need an ID to vote, but you do need an ID to register to vote. So if you need to register to vote and vote, then you need an ID. If all you need to do is vote, then you don't need an ID. Let me tell you, if you're off paper, meaning you've completed your civil rights are restored, you can vote. If you're over 18, you can vote. If you are a naturalized citizen, you can vote. And there's a lot. And so we want to get everybody out there and encourage them. And I will tell you this, I've met with a lot of folks who say, oh, well, does it really matter? You're absolutely right. It matters. If it didn't matter, why are they making laws in Georgia that people can't even give you a glass of water? I mean, if you got any doubts about whether it matters, they wouldn't be trying so hard to stop you from voting, you know? And I heard one young person tell me, well, Malcolm said the Democrats and Republicans blah, blah, blah. I said, brother, in 1965, wasn't no black people really voting anywhere. So one thing Malcolm would never say is to leave power on the table. He would not say, don't use your power. He'd say, use your power. Mm-hmm. So you're taking something that he said in 1962, applying it to 2022, and you're just wrong, you know, because you don't understand the power equation. The bottom line is we have a right and we are worthy to live good lives. Mm-hmm. The government should reflect our interests. That means participate. Don't only vote. I'm not one of those who says the vote is just some magic wand. It's not. Actually, after you vote, it's a lot of hard work. You got to keep that person you elected accountable, including me. But it is a very important start. So
I think people in the community, Keith, really are laying your success in prosecuting the killer of George Floyd as a reason a lot of big money, corporate money, is lining up against you.
$800,000 in from one donor, $500,000 from another. Yeah, they got $1.3 million just trying to tarnish my name, you know.
And you've been subject to the most vicious, erroneous, you know, out and out lies. The DFL has challenged the Republicans, has filed complaints with the election board,
That's
but
right.
those complaints won't be really heard until after the election. But the challenge is appropriate. And what are the principles of the challenge?
Well, here's the basic thing. In American law, campaign law, you can have an independent expenditure and a corporation can express themselves in a campaign, but they cannot do it while collaborating with the candidate. Mm-hmm. The candidate money has to be raised, has to be declared. All the ads have to be, this is my name is so-and-so and I support this message.
Mm-hmm.
Now, these independent expenditures, these separate groups have got to be separate. Well, let me tell you, one human being bought the ads of the independent expenditure and Jim Schultz. So this is illegal collaboration. So he illegally collaborated to spend north of $1.3 million just to push out racist Willie Horton ads. That's what he did. And fear-mongering ads. I mean, this guy has no plans on public safety. He doesn't care about your safety. You know, sadly, there was a shooting in Richfield, Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of saying, you know, my heart goes out to the family of the victim, he just says, oh, this is Ellison's fault. This is why we got to get rid of Ellison. You're using a crime victim's sorrow and loss to try to get a political point in on your opponent. Heartless, man. You know, so this guy, and you know, and I do believe that we're going to prevail, Al. I mean, the energy is good. Of course, I don't know anything, and I don't have any crystal balls, but I do know how my body feels, and this is not the first time I've stood for election. And I know how it feels when things are going well, and I know how it feels when they're not. And I can tell you that, you know, my body is telling me that we're going to be in the winner's circle this evening.
But still, we need everybody to get up and do what they got to do.
Well, my body's telling me that my success depends upon everybody doing what they got to do. Now, if suddenly people don't get me wrong. Now, I'm not saying we got it. We don't have nothing. You know, this thing is nowhere close to in the bag. We need your vote. If you're listening, we need your vote. Do not let a few raindrops slow you down. You know, it's about 53 degrees in Minnesota. And for you Georgians on the line, that's like a heat wave for us. So you need to know that, you know, we need people to get out. And by the way, while I'm on the line, you know, this race between Senator Warnock and Herschel Walker is a race between good and bad, in my opinion. And I'm not saying Herschel's evil. I'm saying Herschel stands for the wrong things. Herschel is not for honesty, not for decency, not for truth. And Raphael Warnock is for all those things. You know, and you know, look, I'm not telling you that if you elect Raphael Warnock that you're going to lose 20 pounds and your breath is going to smell better and you're going to be, you know, I mean, but I'm just saying that he's a good man who cares about people and will work hard for constituents. You know, we don't want to, we want to understand that, you know, consequences come from elections.
What's your take on Fetterman and Oz in Pennsylvania? We've got Bob Bogle in Pennsylvania.
Well, my opinion is that Fetterman, I know Fetterman. Fetterman is a decent guy who cares about people and understands what it means to work hard every day. And Oz is a multi-gazillionaire who is opportunistically parachuting into Pennsylvania. He's not even from there. And because he'd like to be in the U.S. Senate. He doesn't care about you. He's not concerned about your rights. And he's just, and, you know, here's all you need to know about Mehmet Oz. No Muslims that I know support him. I don't know any Muslims. I mean, look, when I was elected to Congress, I was the first Muslim elected to Congress. I don't know any Muslims who are proud of Mehmet Oz, right? And then the other, that's one thing. Let me say one more thing about him. He does experimentation on furry little cute animals, which means he's kind of mean and cruel. And then the third thing is even Oprah won't stand with the guy. Now, if Oprah, who made the man famous, don't want nothing to do with him, he really has got to be not the right choice for Pennsylvania. So I don't know. I mean, I'll defer to greater minds than mine on that question. You know, Mr. Bogle, am I spot on or what? Oh, look like he's muted.
Yeah, we've got a sound delay again. Jim, we hear you good though. Why don't you come in, Jim Washington? And you have to unmute as well.
I said Bob's still trying to get in. I mean, you know, spot on, correct, however you view it. One of the things that is not missed on me, having been in a few political campaigns, not as a candidate, is that at the end of the day, they may shape a candidate's words, if you will, to address a concern that they think that might happen. And I don't know if that's in your case, Keith, but you know what the issues are in your community.
Right.
But what they do is it's all about winning. I had somebody who was high up in the Republican committee said I had it wrong. I thought what you miss is that Republicans, and I'm not the A source of this, Mr. Bogle, they will do anything to win. Period. In the story. All right. I know everybody on this call has been involved in a campaign where their candidate lost, and they knew their candidate was better than the opposition, but it was never about who's the best man for the job.
Yeah.
Never was about who's the best man for the job. Who can win? So in Herschel's case, I can't speak on Oz and others, but in Herschel's, they went and got Herschel Walker from Texas and moved him here.
That's right.
To run.
You're spot on, my good
brother.
I
Established
feel in a very
Republican
similar way
candidate.
as you do about us. I'm not even sure he even lives in Pennsylvania.
That's Bogle.
Go ahead, Bob. We hear you now. Well, there's a little delay. Listen, this is such a rich and wonderful conversation. I'm Al McFarlane. You're listening to The Conversation with Al McFarlane here on KFAI, 90.3 FM in Minneapolis and around the world on the web. We're also streaming live to Black Press USA, Facebook, Black Press USA, the YouTube channel, and also to LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. We're pleased to use all of these technologies to bring us into connection with each other, and particularly today around the critical issues of the future of our country at stake today in today's vote. Keith Ellison, thank you for jumping in quickly. I want to take a couple more minutes. You got to go. I know that we got about 5 minutes to show left as well. And I simply want to keep reminding listeners and viewers to not take any minute for granted. So if you would, make the invitation to people to get up, get out and vote, and to call their friends. How do we connect so that everybody's engaged everywhere?
All right, let me just a few things. One, everybody has a cell phone. Go through all your contacts and remind everybody in that phone that is election day and what the basic rules are. If you got same day voter registration, tell them that. If they don't, whatever the rules are, but just tell them, remind them it's voter day, and tell them you want to hear back when they voted, you want to know. Number two, use your social media of you voting. Show them, going in there, get your little red sticker, show them you're voting. People are social animals. If you show you're voted, people are going to want to vote too. Nobody wants to be the only one who didn't vote, right? And then three, understand that the cynics are going to say things like, well, my only one vote doesn't matter. Look, what raindrop caused the flood? All of them together. So you got to vote. And then folks say, well, voting's not, I'm protesting because I'm mad about, something. Not voting is not a protest. It's a surrender. You're giving up. You're doing what your opponents want you to do. They don't even need to fight you. You just hand it to them. And so this is what you got to do. You got to be stout. You got to be strong. You got to tell people, get out there. And if you are an elder in your family, you really want to use shame against some of your young people.
Mr. Ellison.
Yeah.
And Jim.
Well, then I'm done. I'm done.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Listen, what a wonderful opportunity. Waming, thoughts? We're closed out a couple of minutes. Thank you for being here. How does mobilization work in the Hmong community? I think it works well, but tell me about it.
We're all on social media and we push each other, and we have a clan system, so our clan leaders call all the clan members and to go out and vote, and that's one of the big secrets in our community, and that's how it kind of works. Is like we have a leader and they push our families, and then we push our families, and so that's how it goes.
Bob Bogle, early on, you might not have been on yet, Waming, but Bob Bogle talked and reminded us and challenged us to deal with the problem of lack of cooperation in the Black community with each other. And it seems that what you just described, Waming, is a system of clan leadership that provides a unified direction or instruction that mobilizes people more effectively. Bob, what do we do? What can we do to bridge that inability, the training that we've had to not trust each other? How do we begin to correct that, to find healing and progress in and among our people? And Bob, we're still having bandwidth. I see you talking, but I cannot hear you. So we're listening. We're losing your voice. I'm going to ask Jim the same question, and then Jim, jump in, because we're going to be off in about 3 or 4 minutes here, I think.
All right. We do what we're doing. You do this. This is what it is. This is our new megaphone. This is our new telegraph service. This is our new computer, what have you. And we got to use it to the end that you're talking about. I mean, up until this day, if I may call Mr. Wah Ming, I mean, it's the first time I heard Klan and smiled. I mean, I get it. I get just a little twist of the word, little different photograph I'm looking at, which says that's what we have to rely on. We all part of the same Klan, period. End of story. There may be an education gap, which is why I think what we do professionally, individually, can help the group think, if you will. Because we got to remember what the goal is. My whole thing is policy matters. Policy is where the rules can get changed, etc. Policy can leave you out. Policy can provide you access, and that has to be drilled into us because it has been trained out of us. Thank you for letting me be here today.
Well, listen, I want to thank you all. I want to say, too, that we invited Keith's opponent, Jim Schultz, to be on the program, and we did not hear back from him or his campaign.
We must be consistent, and we must continue to talk about the importance of supporting each other.
Okay, great.
Of America.
That's Bob Bogle. Bob, we hear you now. Keep going. Okay, listen, I think we're out of time. I want to thank you, Bob Bogle. Thank you, Jim Washington. Thank you, Waming Moore. Brenda, of course, thank you. And I'm going to hand it up to the station a couple of minutes early. This has been a great program, a wonderful program. I simply want to remind all of us listening and watching to follow the instructions from our esteemed Attorney General. Use your phone. Go to your phone book and tell everybody, text everybody, invite them to make sure that they are voting, ask them to vote, and ask them to do the same thing with all of their contacts. We need to get everybody that can vote to vote today. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation. Join me again this time next week. We'll have a good time continuing this conversation. To my colleagues, again, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you.
Good job of telling the story of